Hello, and welcome to Rule of Carnage. This is a series of conversations, chats, carryings on between myself, Glenn Ford, a game designer and developer, and my good friend Mike Hutchinson, also a game designer and developer. Generally, we talk about designing better miniature games on this channel, but for the last few conversations, and probably the next couple of conversations, we've been talking a little bit more specifically about a way of getting a better miniature game that you've designed into the hands of the general public. And more specifically, we're relating it to the better miniature game that Mike has designed, Space Gits, as you can see from his special limited edition background going on. So we've talked a bit about tiers. We've talked a bit about production and manufacture. I guess so. We've mentioned in the previous conversations a little bit about marketing and advertising and promotion,
Yeah.
which is a spicy meatball. So we may as well try and start talking about that. I think in this conversation, this chat, it's really hard. I think, and specifically
Hard to talk about or hard to get
hard to do,
attention?
hard to achieve.
It's hard to get attention, and using marketing to get attention is also hard.
Yes, and it can be, certainly for a small independent, it can get very expensive very quickly.
Mm.
And what is for a small independent a lot of money can very easily not make much of a dent, and can be sort of more or less wasted funds.
Yeah.
And I think there are, more effective and more efficient ways of doing it without having to spend money. So hopefully we'll sort of talk about a few of those things.
Yeah. So shall I talk a little bit about how I'm planning to approach this, and then we can sort of identify some of the things that I'm ignoring or deliberately not doing, and figure out whether that's a good idea. Because I have had one person already give me a lecture about one thing that I'm not doing and how I ought to be doing more of it.
Hmm.
So the main the main uh, technique strategy, I should say, that I am using to get eyeballs onto my Space Gits Kickstarter campaign when it goes live, and indeed right now in the sort of pre-launch gathering followers on the Kickstarter page, is the thing that I've been doing for a year and a bit, which is building what they call a first party audience. So building a bunch of people on YouTube through my itch like followers, through my Patreons that get emails when I post things there. Like I've got and my website, I've got 4 channels now where people are vaguely paying attention and I can actually trigger like content to go in their direction. And I haven't been particularly thorough about sending emails and, doing newsletters and stuff because there hasn't been an enormous reason to do that. Like when I get the web store set up and people can actually exchange money for physical products, then I'm going to start doing it more. And around the Kickstarter, I'm going to do it more. But like first party audience, which is the people who have chosen to pay attention to me because I've bumped into them slowly over a number of years of building that audience. And obviously my like the recognizability of Gaslands and me as the designer and this podcast and all the other things that I'm doing that kind of generate a background hum about what I'm doing, those people eventually hopefully get driven to either my YouTube channel where they will see me talking endlessly about Space Kits for the next 3 months, or to my Patreon where they will get things dropped into their email box. So I think that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Um, I can move on to the next, but we can talk about that a little bit first.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general terms, I think the main conclusion probably of this section will be that, like, as a small independent, the main sort of marketing thing that you have at your disposal is you. You are kind of marketing yourself and the idea that the things that spin off of your head are interesting and worthwhile and people might like them, and that people might like you, and this is why, hopefully being quite open about the design process, having things like open play testing and beta play testing groups of people. And the people that are in your open play testing go on to sort of not just be fans of you, but hopefully flag bearers for the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think is by far and away like the most efficient and best way of promoting that folk like this have available to us.
It's weird actually because that brings into focus something that like for a while I have been frustrated a little bit when I see someone say like the guys behind Gaslands or like the guys behind A Billion Suns did this, that, or the other, or like made this decision or whatever, as if like I'm a big company that has multiple staff members making decisions in a sort of weird boardroom way. And it's sort of been frustrating me because it's like, oh, I'm not like a huge team of people. Like I'm just making mistakes by myself. Like it's fine. But at the same time, there's a reframing of that, which is actually, oh, every time someone says the guys behind Gaslands, it's sort of a branding problem. It's like I haven't educated them that the thing I'm trying to get across is that like I'm an artist with a thing and you can follow me and follow my journey. It's a personal connection. So what you've said there, I really agree with that. One of the primary values that we have got as independent makers is to keep that like that personality alive around it and not sort of, I mean, with Planet Smasher Games, for example, like I've put a brand in front of myself for a few different reasons, but I'm not trying to like subsume myself into this brand so that I become like a company. And it's weird because I do see a lot of sort of small miniature game companies doing that thing where they create a brand and it looks slick and then they all hide behind the brand. And I understand why that is a sensible way of approaching things, but I do think it potentially misses a trick when you're as small as we are.
Well, it's one of those weird things that I see quite often, and I've mentioned a few times, is that all of the small like indies and sort of individual producers want to make themselves look bigger and constantly refer to themselves as we and the team and etc etc. Meanwhile, all the big companies constantly try to refer to themselves as being small and little, and you
Mm.
know KFC will talk about our kitchen or something as though there's like a little guy back there with like a two burner stove, or GW will constantly try and talk about it as though it's like a small hobby producer, because they know that what we have is valuable and we know what they have is valuable, and neither of
Mm.
us have the other. So
Yeah.
you try and rather than just like trying to sometimes leverage what you've got anyway, which
Mm.
hopefully should be more useful. I do want to say, like, quickly, you were saying about followers for the Kickstarter, and
Well, yeah. So I guess just before we move on to that, then, like, because this is sort of leads into it. So at the beginning of the year last year, I was trying to figure out, like, numerically, how many people do I need in my first party audience in order to deliver a successful and sensible Kickstarter campaign. So I was thinking about, like, what what's the sort of audience that I need on YouTube? What's the conversion rate I will likely get from posting a video on YouTube to getting someone to actually give me money for a Space Gits? And like that helped me think about what the size of channel that I needed to get to was. And I've been working hard on YouTube, but I don't think my channel is where I need it to get to. So I'm about 2,500 people. If I was twice that, if I was 5,000, I'd be feeling good about like 20% conversion rate is insanely high to get to like 1,000 people on a Kickstarter, but like it's within the realms of possibility. Right now, I'm like 2,500. If I want to get to like similar to Hobgoblin, I'd have to have a 50% conversion rate on my YouTube audience, which is ludicrous and wouldn't happen. So I don't feel like I've managed to manufacture the best situation for my first party audience, but at the same time, like um, there is an enormous audience outside of my first party audience, and that's where this like the next set of tools will come in.
yeah, and like yeah, I have very mixed feelings about sort of you need X many followers on X thing,
Mm,
before launching. Like way back when I first launched SSO, around the same time as I was sort of trying to start promoting it, There was another guy who had a fully completed card game with full artwork, totally ready to go on Kickstarter, like physically. And we were communicating back and forth because he was trying to get followings. And there was a point where I decided to launch, and he was like, no, 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 you can't launch until you've got X number of followers. X number of followers. I will not launch until I get to X number of followers.
I like that you're not saying X in case it lodges in someone's brain as like
Yeah.
a psychic termite.
The point is, he never launched. The game never launched. He never, got to that point, and he sort of, I assume he just got sort of worn down by the process and gave up on it. And I think the thing is, it's like a couple of things. One, there is no number of followers that you can have that will actually guarantee success. And a good example of this is Gabe, the guy who used to do the board game advice podcast. He, when he launched his game, I think it's called Flick Ships, one of his first games, had over 1 million subscribers.
Wow.
And Flick Ships failed. You didn't fund. So there is no number that will guarantee you success, and I honestly think there is no number of followers before you launch that will sort of also guarantee you failure. I think the followers are nice to have. They're good. They're a boost. They help. The one thing that will guarantee you never funding is never launching.
Well, so I mean, just to zero in exactly on what it is that you're getting with those followers, because it matters. Like, what you're getting with a follower is you're getting that someone receives a notification if they have notifications enabled on whatever platform of receiving notifications they are okay with. Every follower is potentially going to get a notification that you've just launched the campaign, and probably will also get a notification within the website itself when they come to Kickstarter.com or they boot the Kickstarter app. And there are other ways of achieving that exact same thing. So the idea that there is something magic about a Kickstarter pre-launch page follow, it's kind of insane to me, because they're just a pathway for getting a notification at the moment of launch. And obviously getting oxygen at the moment of launch is crucial for some reasons that we already talked about before, and I'm sure we'll talk about a bit more. But like, there's nothing magic about that follow. It's just
but
another
fundamentally, I think
notification channel.
any number someone comes up with, even if there's like maths behind it, is fairly arbitrary. And my personal feeling is, work to gain a following, put and promote your game and put it out there and get eyes on it, because there are multiple reasons why you want people to look at your game and give you feedback. But fundamentally, launch when you're ready, not because a certain number has gone up to a certain point or
Right.
not gone up to a certain point. And a lot of the time, increasingly, my feeling is that when I hear people saying things like, I've got to get to a certain number of followers, it more and more feels like an excuse to put off doing the scary thing, which is launching the Kickstarter. And it's a sort of like, good, until that number hits X amount, I don't have to be seen and judged by people. And it's like, it's not going to save you, and it's not going to kill you. Do your best to get people following your game, but don't let it dictate your schedule. And one of the things I think, a fundamental thing to remember throughout the whole of the idea of Kickstarter is, you lose nothing from a failed Kickstarter. If anything, you gain, because anybody who went to back that first Kickstarter will almost certainly come back and back the next one. There are multiple examples of relaunch projects that went on to be hugely successful. And so the idea of like, the world will fall apart if this Kickstarter fails, it just won't. It'll be fine. Don't sort of hang your sort of self-esteem and all of your future hopes upon a Kickstarter funding, because if I've had some that failed, and it turns out it's fine. And it was like, and it failing was actually a really good thing. It was like, whatever the sixth one, that failed, and it was like, that's good, because now it's done, and I don't have to be like, I have a perfect record. I can be like, You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's okay. It's all right. It doesn't make any difference. It didn't hurt the next project that launched, and I think that Kickstarter backers are more than savvy enough to know that failed projects don't really mean anything against you.
So moving out a layer of the marketing onion, I sort of think the next layer of the onion is organic sharing. So you got a bunch of your like most attentive, interested fans to get involved. And then you've got the question of what will motivate them or stop them from sharing what you are making with other people. And so, like, I think this kind like if you want to learn more about this subject, you can go and look at like growth hacking is a fancy term for trying to figure out what will make people either do something or not do something when it comes to organic sharing. And so there's like a ton of articles and reading to do around this. But in general, I feel like there are a couple ways of approaching this. One is give give them something give them something worthy of sharing, something to talk about with their friend so that they will talk about it. And that is as much to do with the like hook of the game and thus the campaign as anything else. And so it's not like specifically around Kickstarter, but like there has to be a reason why someone is excited enough to mention this. And then the shadow side of that is like try and imagine what it might be that stops people from like I want to talk about my friend to my friend about this, but you know, and that can be a bunch of different reasons from like it looks a bit expensive to get involved, or like it doesn't have any overlap with the miniatures or the games we already play, or it looks too close to something else that we already play, or it looks too complicated, or the rules aren't available for free, or it's a bit cheesecakey, or like a number of different things can come into like why I might not share something and also why I might want to share something. And I think that yeah, sorry, and then I think that this also applies to like the next layer out, which is like sort of organic social sharing, which is like why is this worth like posting to Instagram or like posting on your social feed of choice. Like, is there something visually interesting or like a hobby thing that I can immediately grab hold of? Like, I think this was the killer app for Gaslands, was like it let me get involved with something in a really easy and tangible way. So I think organic sharing in general is kind of like a big problem to solve.
Yeah, and it's like, look, the most obvious thing in the world, really, until you sort of do it or don't do it, is basic calls to action.
Right.
Particularly during a Kickstarter campaign. No single thing I've ever done has ever had as much of an appreciable jump in backers than putting up an update saying, please share the project. Just
Right.
literally saying to your backers, please share it. Obviously, don't like do it multiple times, but once or twice during a campaign, just saying, look, guys, please, honest to God, because you can just literally see your percentage jump after putting out an update like that. You'll have like, but particularly in the middle of a campaign, one of the best days you'll have in the middle of a campaign will be when you just put up an update, because frankly, people don't think to share projects. You
Mm.
back a project and this little springle comes up and it says, now go and share it.
No,
Nobody
no, it's just,
goes.
yeah, it's just a piece of annoying web UI you see everywhere, like
Yeah,
whatever.
and you skip it and you go on. And you, the creator, saying to the people who are like believing in you and giving you money and caring about this project, saying, look, guys,
Mm.
I know you might not believe in it. I know that it's a chore and a pain, but please, if you know somebody you think might be interested in this game, please go now and share it. I swear to God, it's the best piece of marketing advertising that you can do, that is like a one paragraph thing that you can
Mm.
send out. And it's like I didn't do it until like maybe the third or fourth project that I launched, because it feels a little bit cheesy and a little bit embarrassing, but it really works, and just do it. And like I say, it's a pretty simple and obvious thing, but it is worth making the effort to do, just to remind people that sharing is a good idea. I think
In
like
in marketing land, there's a tradition and a pattern for doing this with I can't remember the technical word for it, but basically like sharing with some kind of reciprocal benefit for the person who shares it. So the classic example here is in the early days of Dropbox, I could invite friends, and every time I invited a friend, I got a kickback of like another 10 megabytes in my Dropbox bandwidth or whatever. I think what's fun about Kickstarter is that you don't have to do that, because the incentive is sort of built into the fact that like we're all at this point we're all in the same boat together, hoping that it will stay afloat and fun. So the like, to a degree, the like in there's an intrinsic sort of motivation for doing this. You don't have to offer them. You don't have to offer the people a carrots necessarily,
Yeah, so
or an
I think
additional carrot.
the elephant in the room in relation to rewards for getting more people to back on Kickstarter is something that we'll talk about maybe in the next conversation, because it'll be a bit of going into, but we'll just mention the phrase here, stretch goals,
Right.
because that's obviously what they are meant to be. We'll
Mm.
talk about the pros and cons of stretch goals in the next conversation. Just saying, we're not unaware of it, because people go, oh, that stretch goals, that's what that is. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't.
we'll put a pin in that for a longer conversation.
Yeah, I think what I mean, what I would say is, like, I think that one of the things that's a big benefit for a minis gaming project is there is an obvious built-in community like shareable thing, which is putting together painting and showing miniatures, doing a little, you know, okay, this is where how we're going to run a little competition, and I will share the voted for chosen mini or whatever in an update on a certain date. Is like I did mention before, but sort of one of the things you can do when planning out a Kickstarter is to plan out some updates that you are going to do whatever happens during the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So, like in a previous Kickstarter, a couple of previous Kickstarters, I built little puzzle online RPGs that the backers could play through,
Mm.
and had a hidden page. And like the end of the RPG, if you like figured out the puzzles, etc., gave you a code so that you could visit that page. And if the page count on the counter on that page got to a certain number, we unlocked a little stretch goal. I don't think like that it would have been necessary, like the stretch goal bit of it was necessary, but seeing people in the comments pop up and discuss the puzzle that had been released that particular week, and hopefully some people would have been like, well, I want because it was a unique visitor counter. Hopefully a few people just sent this random web address to their friends and said, could you just visit this web address? I just because
Yeah.
it's but I totally think, like, for minis games, planning out, okay, this will be the day on which I'll say, okay, convert up an orc to be doing blah blah. We're going to have voted, and the vote.
Yeah, and there's lots of different like yeah, and it doesn't even have to be voting and competitions necessarily, or it can
No,
be like one of those, but it could just be like here's the day that we're all sharing the thing, or every Thursday we share the thing. And
I
you've got like building as well as painting as well as
hmm.
terrain, like there's loads of zones to.
Yeah, I think it's nice to like have an opening moment and a closing moment. And
Oh
the thing
right,
about
yeah.
a competition, it gives a certain finality to it.
Mm,
And it's a nice community thing where it gives you an extra update that you can, things that
mm,
will give you updates you can do at certain points. And I think like
mm,
celebrating bits of the community and their builds in updates, and I think that hobbyists are really sort of delighted to go, well done, Bob, for like doing that many. It's super cool. I love this thing. And
yeah.
so I think that like having something like a competition gives a sort of an arc to the set of updates, and encourages community. But yeah, absolutely, you can just go like, okay, let's make day X Space Gits game Space Gits day on Instagram. Let's flood Instagram with our Space Gits. That's the thing we're doing, guys. Or whatever it happens to be. Are all cool things, all things that can motivate people.
Yeah. I mean, so from this point, there's a few other layers of the onion, and they all get a bit more expensive than this. So I guess before we probably call this conversation and save the spending money on marketing for next week, are there other kinds of like free marketing that you think are relevant to be thinking about for Space Gits Kickstarter and for the viewers at home?
I mean, as I say, like, well, obviously all the social medias that you have available. That's one of the major ones. I think, and I think one of the things is that you know, just learning to let go of the shame of self promotion. I think is one of the tough things. You don't want to be going out there and spamming things, but you do need to get over the thing of, you know, I don't like saying this thing that I've made is amazing and you should follow it because it's brilliant. But you do have to just let that go and get past it. I think in-person promotion, I think um, can be a really big thing. Obviously there's a real limit to how much you can do, but if you've got any kind of conventions in your area, and I realized more and more this is something where living in the UK and for creators in the US, we're very spoiled for, because I've been talking to creators in other countries where they're just like, conventions aren't a thing. But if you are lucky enough, certainly to live in the US or the UK, get to every convention you can possibly get to, because a lot of those people will be like, the more hardcore cheerleaders, because actually physically meeting somebody really anchors something in your brain.
I think that for me is definitely the primary advantage is that you can you can build relationships uh one directionally over the internet as like a person who's making content and sharing content, but that like actual human connection creates a person who's going to go away and hopefully talk favorably about you and your game, and is much more likely to then become a local cheerleader in their club or their area.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, we will talk about some of the paid options, and the pros and cons and pitfalls of those. But I really, really think that the free options by and large are kind of better. They have, like, obviously a better return on investment, but just generally have more of an effect. And I suppose we should talk, because this might be a thing that will sort of cross the line across from like paid and unpaid, about reviewers.
Yeah,
Um,
let's cover that. Let's cover that next time because I think it bleeds so much into influencer marketing that it's worth gathering those straws together.
okay, well,
Yeah.
yeah, in that case, I guess that might be a good place to wrap this conversation up. So this is, yeah, just some general ideas about sort of personal promotion, and I think the most important like rule to bear in mind here um is just start doing it now. you know um Photographs of play tests, photographs of minis that you might be painting for a game that you're imagining doing, and posting them on Instagram. you know just do it. If you literally, there's a game that you're thinking of going somewhere with, and you are playtesting it, and you own a digital camera, which you probably do, take a photograph, make an Instagram account, post photograph on Instagram account. It's not.
And even if no one sees it now, the wonderful thing is that you're creating a sort of breadcrumb trail. You're creating a story that will usefully exist when later you become, you get slightly more attention. Like having that longevity has always been of interest and of value on the internet, whether it's like when did I join this forum or this group, like
Yeah,
showing that you've been around for a while and doing things. It just works with people's brains.
absolutely. It's all well and good to say I've been playtesting this thing for the last 6, 12 months, 2 years. It's quite another when people can go to a social media thing and see, well, there's a photo dated from 2 years ago
Yeah.
of this dude playtesting this thing. You know, that's definitive proof that a playtest took place, but you know, about this game a year ago, or
Yeah.
whatever it happens to be. And yeah, and it's like, you know, okay, the following for something like that isn't exactly going to skyrocket as soon as you start doing it. But you know, you've got to start somewhere, and you know, if you are a gamer, if you are a hobbyist, you have an inherently visual, you know, thing that you're doing. Painting, modeling, it's a very visual thing, and the internet and Kickstarter is an extremely visual medium. And just getting out there and posting pictures of things, you know, good or bad or sloppy or whatever, is a way of starting the conversation. And I'll
Mm.
say you will spend a long time feeling like you are laboring in the darkness and nobody is watching you and you're just shouting into a bucket. But that is the nature of the beast. That's gonna happen for a good long while,
Yeah.
and it's just you. That's one of the things you've just got to keep plugging away at. Um, yeah, so that I think that's our conversation on this part of the marketing journey. Tell you what, don't use the phrase journey in relation to your social media like progress, because every time I hear that, you know, that's not a good sign for a project. Anyway,
Well, I don't know. We can have a conversation about that, Mr. Ford. I feel
journey.
differently. I feel differently.
Yeah, I loathe the idea, the word journey specifically.
Look,
Um,
people like stories, man. Stories
yeah,
are all
people
about
like
journeys.
stories. Journeys aren't stories; they're journeys. Anyway, look, okay, swing down to the comment section. Tell us if you are pro the word journey when someone says, you know, I'm beginning my social media journey, or anti it. Tell us about
Or their alcohol journey.
tell us about a successful, like, personal, you know, let's call it a viral marketing, you know,
Yeah.
process, something like that that you saw, were part of, that got you to back a Kickstarter. You know, what parts of it might be recreatable, what parts of it you're trying to emulate in your own social media journey. As you go down there and tell us these things, hit the likes and subscribes. And just around that sort of like, subscribe, comment area, there's a set of links. Some of the links will be across to our Discord, where you can go over and you can see us trying to build audience for the things we're doing. Others of the things will be to our websites, where you can swing by and support us by buying our gear.
Mm.
Also, there will be links to our Patreons, where you can swing by and support us by joining our Patreon backers and subscribers. And of course, there will be links certainly to the Space Gits landing page, where you can go and you can literally fulfill the dream of what this conversation has been about by making Space Gits follower number go up. Also, there'll probably be a link in there to Boards and Black Flags at this point, so you can also do that for Boards and Black Flags. But for now, from this conversation, I think that's going to be a thank you and goodbye. So thank you and goodbye. Bye-bye.
What's ironic is that we haven't talked about content marketing, which of course is very meta because this entire podcast is content marketing for everything we do. So do that as well, people. Bye bye.